look, you're going to want to watch this segment because you want to know about the drones. That's what we're going to talk about. So I'm with John Ferguson. I'm going to let you just take it away. Tell us what you do and tell us what you know.
Okay, well, I own a company that manufactures military-grade unmanned aircraft, and DoD are my biggest customers, and I sell unmanned systems around the world. And when I saw the drone issue arise...
Today, people in the New York metro area are reporting a growing number of drone sightings in their communities following a wave of mysterious drone appearances in the skies over New Jersey. This is sparking significant concern among residents and local and state leaders.
I saw a lot of the elected officials saying that these are operated by the Chinese or the Iranians, are coming out of the water, coming out of an Iranian flagship.
Oh, it wasn't something out of the water?
No, I just thought, oh my God, this is what we elected. So anyway, I'm very compelled to do a quick video. I've never done a TikTok video before, ever. And that thing got all of those crazy views.
You blew up on TikTok, your very first one.
I did.
So I thought I was here to talk to you about drones. Apparently we're talking about like how to win on TikTok.
I mean, TikTok to me is looking at funny little goats and little miniature cows. And then I did this video and it just went crazy wild. And now I'm being told that it has over 500 million views.
Oh my goodness.
All of the platforms.
500 million views.
I guess. So
wow.
That's what they're saying. But the big thing was that I wanted to give America and the world an expert's view on what I thought these drones were and what they were doing. Now, rewind a little bit. I have been for the past year working with a gentleman who has been trying to raise awareness of a nuclear warhead that's a suitcase-sized nuclear warhead that is being brought into the United States. And
what?
Yeah. So back in the 80s and the 90s, Ronald Reagan and Gorbachev dismantled the nuclear program between the two countries, right? 132 of these nuclear warheads came up missing. They did a great...
Are you kidding me?
I'm not even joking. You can Google it, right?
The world is missing 132 nuclear warheads?
We were.
Okay. We were.
So the problem was they did a great job of dismantling the nuclear program, but what they didn't do is they didn't do the follow-up. They didn't have any regulations after they had the agreement. 132 of them went into the black market.
Oh, my God.
And so there are now like 7 or 8 that are still out there that
they found
know of. Yes.
125 of them.
General Lebed, or as they say, Lebedge, he was the one who was selling these on the black market, and he was assassinated. Now we fast forward.
Who assassinated him?
Don't know.
Okay.
So we fast forward to now. Do you remember that Russian General Kirillov a couple of months ago that was assassinated by that scooter? Well, he was a part of this as well. After I did my video, he was assassinated, and that's no joke.
You're kidding.
I'm not even joking. It was maybe it was a just a happenstance or whatever. I don't know, but he was taken out by the Ukrainians. So we know that there is a 20 kiloton nuclear warhead here in the United States somewhere. And I just said, look, drones have no reason to be flying at night unless you're looking for something very, very, very specific. And you would want to fly at night if you're trying to detect parts per million because the winds are down, the pressures are down, everything's more calm, and you can get a more accurate reading when you're trying to sniff for gas leaks or radioactive material or whatever, because you're measuring parts per million. I've got a colleague that went over to Germany and they were trying to find mass graves from World War II. And our gas detection sensors are so sensitive that they could actually detect methane coming off of mass graves. So that's just to give you an idea of how accurate these sensors are, right?
Wow.
Yeah. So again, our foreign policy is the worst it's ever been in the Biden administration. And so why the hell would you poke the bear? Why would you go and blame the Chinese? The Chinese are sitting back there going, that's not ours, So, and then the Iranians are sitting back saying, well, they're not ours either. Well, you cannot fly a drone in this country of mass scale, that size, without having FAA authorization. And if they were going to be a nefarious type of an organization or country, they wouldn't be flying with freaking nav lights on.
Right.
Right? So
why would you be FAA compliant?
Why would you?
You're trying to
So the FAA, and we all knew that the FAA knew about it because you can't fly it. We also have remote ID, so you can get a little app on your phone and you can point the app at the aircraft and you can see whose it is.
Really?
Yeah, it's just called remote ID. You can get that, right? Also, some people were trying to use their drones to go take out those big drones. And
How big were they?
I mean, they were,
Like the size of a car?
yeah, small car.
Wow.
Mine are a little smaller than that, but these are a couple $100,000 drones, right?
Yeah.
And there's hundreds or thousands of them flying all over the East Coast. So there's hundreds of millions of dollars invested into these drones to do this operation. You want to fly at night because you want to fly under the cloak of darkness. You don't want people to be able to see the superstructure or the fuselage. Then you could find out who is actually manufacturing the drones, and then you can go knock on their door. So that's why they're flying at night, because they're flying under the cloak of darkness, and the environment is much better for getting better ground samples.
So you think they're sniffing for these nukes?
I know they're sniffing for nukes. We use thermal imaging to see at night, and you would use thermal imaging for search and rescue or intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, looking for bad guys. You wouldn't really use thermal imaging for trying to find gas leaks, because once gas escapes out of a pipeline or the ground or whatever, it goes to ambient too quickly. So thermal imaging is not really good. We have methane detection systems. We have TD-LAS systems that can measure the parts per million. So you wouldn't want to use thermal for gas leaks, but you would want to use thermal to see where you're going at night, because that's what it does. And it measures the heat and cold air differences, right? So you can put your hand on a Coke can, put it on the table, take your hand off, and you can see very clearly your handprint, right?
Yeah.
So that's what thermal imaging does. So it's not good for finding anything other than heat sources. And so
are these nukes heat sources?
No, because they would be shielded, right?
Right.
The only way you're going to find a nuclear warhead is if any of the radioactive material would escape from the shielding, right? So how long do you have? If you take the warhead that's literally the size of a suitcase, if you take it out of its shielding, you have that time to find that asset with a nuke sniffing drone. That's probably why they have so many of them out there, right?
Wow.
So, and people say, well, how can you smuggle a nuclear warhead in the United States? And I was like, well, I don't know. How could
smuggle anything?
Well, how could the
size of
Biden
body.
administration sneak in over 40 million, and I said that correctly, I said 40 million illegals from around the world into this country? They did that. They can bring in a nuke. Not a problem.
So Trump, a couple of days before the election, I think he started mentioning this, right?
Yes.
And said he would release and tell who it is. I noticed he hasn't said anything about it.
Yeah. Do you know why?
Probably because it would freak the entire country out.
Well, could you imagine any administration getting on national news or worldwide news and saying,
there's a nuclear
we lost
bomb.
132 of those damn things a long time ago. We think there's probably one around here somewhere. But don't worry about it. We're going to find it. We got all these drones out there looking for it. They know it. Ain't nobody going to say that. He can't say what they're looking for.
He can't.
The Pentagon or whoever is in charge of this is probably saying, Mr. President, you should probably not say anything about this right now. Let us figure this out. We'll get back with you.
Well, and then, it clearly alerts the people who may or may not know that these drones are looking for them, that they're looking for them and how. So,
yeah, but,
but I would imagine they would.
I would encourage
anticipate that.
Yeah, they would.
If they're sophisticated enough to have a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, and that's so crazy that all of this is unfolded like this, but you can't take a drone and go try to crash into a drone because they have jamming capabilities on these drones, because they expected people to do that, right? They expected people to try to shoot these things out of the air. They anticipate all this, but my message to the American people is, I don't want to scare the hell out of everybody, but I want Americans to stand up and be counted and say, look, we're going to send a message to not this administration, but the previous administration, and say, look, you work for us. We put you in office. If we have questions, you answer, right? There are some things that they can't answer, because if they did answer, like President Trump, if he were to answer those questions directly, they would evacuate the whole Eastern Seaboard, right? So there is that. But I want Americans to stand up and have one voice and let Washington D.C. the leadership here in this city, let them understand that we are the American people and we're standing together and we want answers. When we ask questions, you answer because you work for us. That's what I wanted people. That's the message that I wanted people to have based on my video. And I mobilized a lot of people to do that.
So, John, you mentioned to me that you've done a lot with sex trafficking and you spent a lot of your own personal money in this fight. Tell us about that.
So after I got out of the Marine Corps, I got into deep sea diving. And from deep sea diving, I went into piloting submersible vehicles around the world. I've been to 85 different countries now. I think 85.
Wow.
So I've traveled around the world a lot. And I've seen the child sex trafficking around the world. And I thought, my God, that's disgusting. But thank God that stuff doesn't happen here. But it wasn't until I got a contract to go south of the border with my unmanned aircraft that I actually started to realize that this is the epicenter for child sex trafficking of the world.
The United States.
Right here. And then I started doing work on the border, combating narco-terrorism, child sex trafficking, human trafficking on the border. So I've never taken a paycheck ever from this. This has all been my own money, my own time, my own contribution to making America a safer place. Nobody ever heard of me, ever, because I just did all of this stuff with just a small group of guys until the Mexican organization that I was working with, they said, go back to the United States and tell people what's happening down here and let people know that we're fighting this down here too. Before it ever gets to your stupid border, we're fighting this down here. And so I took that message and I started doing public speaking events to try to raise awareness to say, hey, look, this is an epidemic that needs to be solved, but we need to work on it together and not against each other. But yeah, I've spent years going south of the border and in other countries, and I've spoken to presidents of other countries that I don't want to say right now. Sorry. But my goal is to work with these other nations and stop the human and child sex trafficking before it even gets here to the United States. And that's been fairly effective. There's a lot of great organizations out there that are well funded and doing great work, and I don't even compare to those. I'm just doing what I can do.
How is this the epicenter of it?
I don't know if I should answer that on open air.
Okay.
But
I mean, if you don't,
the money,
it's
so the deep
I'm not
state,
pushing you.
No, the deep state is running this. They're running all of this. And I'm going to be introducing the world to a sheriff or a police officer that has been uncovering this stuff and has the actual nucleus of all of the money for the deep state and how the child sex trafficking is being funneled through this country. I'm going to be introducing that gentleman to the world here probably within the next 30 to 45 days.
How are you going to do that?
I can't say that right now. And that is,
but I would love to have you as a follow up. You know, after and whenever that happens,
you will absolutely have that opportunity.
And because
it's going to be this whole nuclear warhead thing. I've been telling people that this is like the story of the century because of all of the nefarious activity, and we actually have documentation now that shows that our own agencies knew about this and covered it up. The nuclear warhead stuff, right? But now we have actual documentation of how the deep state has been using child sex trafficking to fund their operations, and that's going to come.
Have you been in touch with Doge?
We have been in touch with people, yes, and we are proceeding with discussions to bring this to the light of day. This stuff that is going to come out here pretty soon.
Careful in case that mic's
I'm not gonna have a Bill Clinton moment. So, but yeah, it's gonna be pretty freaking huge.
Keep up the good work, man. I really appreciate you doing that.
You bet.
You're a true American.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man.
I appreciate it.
I do. That means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
John Ferguson. Like, subscribe, turn your alerts on. This is the Lawyer Dana Show.